Hello there. Welcome to Scientific Serenity. Our story begins in the late 18th century, in the River Luján region of what is now Argentina. But to set the stage, we must first imagine the scene centuries earlier, when the first indigenous peoples of the Americas ventured into deep caves for shelter, for ritual, or for curiosity. What did they find? On the soft clay floors, hardened by millennia, they would have seen them. Gigantic, three-toed footprints, some over half a meter across. The claw marks at the front were as long as a man's hand. To a human standing beside it, the print would have come up to their knee. What manner of beast could make such a track? It was unlike any known animal. Not a bear, not a big cat, not a mastodon. It was the signature of something utterly unknown. The first scientific recognition of these remains, however, came from the Old World. In 1788, a Dominican friar named Manuel Torres, acting on rumors of giant bones, sent a remarkable collection of fossils from Luján to the Royal Cabinet of Natural History in Madrid. Among them was a colossal femur, vertebrae the size of dinner plates, and most startling of all, a single curved claw, longer than a saber-toothed cat's fang and thick as a bull's horn. The scientists in Europe were baffled. The bones were clearly mammalian, but of a scale that rivaled elephants. The claw was something from a nightmare. The great French anatomist Georges Cuvier, the father of paleontology, took on the puzzle. With meticulous skill, he began to assemble the skeleton. And as he did, a bizarre, hybrid creature emerged from the stone. It had the heavy build and massive limbs of a pachyderm, but the distinct skull and teeth of a sloth. A sloth the size of an elephant. The contradiction was stunning. Cuvier named it Megatherium americanum, the great American beast. But the cave was not done giving up its secrets. As more expeditions probed the caverns of Patagonia, Brazil, and the Andes, they found more than bones. They found caves whose walls were scarred from floor to ceiling with long, parallel gouges. At first, these were thought to be geological formations. But their regularity, their depth, and their presence in caves also containing Megatherium bones told a different story. These were claw marks. This giant sloth had not just died in these caves, it had lived in them, or used them regularly. It had dragged its incredible, scythe-like claws across the walls, perhaps to sharpen them, to dig for roots or water, or simply to move its monumental body through the narrow passages. The image was terrifying, a beast the weight of a rhinoceros, shuffling through pitch-black subterranean labyrinths, its claws screeching against the stone, its breath fogging in the cold, damp air. The discovery shattered the European understanding of the natural world. It proved that the Earth had hosted monsters in the very recent geological past, creatures not found in any bestiary or scripture. And it placed South America as a lost world of fantastical megafauna, a continent where the rules of size and form had been rewritten. As you listen, let the soundscape pull you into that cave. The dripping water, the moaning wind, the occasional unnerving scrape. This is the sound of discovery. It is the sound of the dark speaking, of the past reaching out with a stony claw to tap the present on the shoulder. We have found the giant's calling card. But a claw and a footprint are not an animal. To understand the being that made them, we must exhume the rest of its body from the rock and rebuild the giant, bone by bone. The discovery of Megatherium was not an isolated event. It was the first crack in a dam, unleashing a flood of revelations about a lost age of giants in the Americas. As the 19th century progressed, more fossils emerged from the pampas grasslands, tar pits, and cave systems of South America, painting a picture of an ecosystem almost too bizarre to be real. Megatherium was the crown jewel, but it shared its world with a menagerie of wonders: the armored tank-like Glyptodon, the predatory terror bird Phorusrhacos, and the elephant-sized relative Megatherium's smaller cousin, the Mylodon. But it was the caves that held the most intimate and eerie evidence. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, explorers like Francisco Moreno in Patagonia and later, a young geologist named Rodolfo Hothel, made astounding finds. They entered caves whose floors were paved with desiccated dung, mats of coarse reddish hair, and leathery patches of skin, all belonging to Megatherium and its relatives. In the cold, dry air of certain Patagonian caves, these organic remains had been mummified, not fossilized. This was no longer just bone. This was preserved flesh and fur. The most famous of these sites is Cueva del Milodon in Chilean Patagonia. Here, early 20th century explorers found a veritable lair, a massive, walled-off area within the cave containing a mound of dung and hair so large it formed a distinct layer. The walls bore the now familiar parallel claw marks. The air in the cave was said to hold a peculiar, ancient odor. It wasn't hard to imagine the scene: a family group of these gigantic sloths using the cave as a shelter, a latrine, a refuge from the Patagonian wind, generation after generation, for thousands of years. This presented a new, haunting question. The remains in these caves were not always neatly skeletal. Some showed signs of being butchered. Stones that could have been used as tools were found nearby. And most provocatively, in some caves, the giant sloth remains were found in association with human artifacts, primitive hearths, stone scrapers, and even painted symbols on the walls. The timeline was collapsing. This wasn't just a beast from a deep, impersonal past. This was a creature that had looked into the eyes of humans. Our ancestors had not only seen Megatherium, they had likely hunted it, sheltered in its abandoned dens, and perhaps feared it as the most formidable herbivore in their world. Back in Europe, the reconstructed skeletons began to take center stage in the great museums of London, Paris, and Madrid. Standing before the mounted Megatherium in the Museo de la Plata in Argentina or the Natural History Museum in London, Victorian audiences were struck with a mix of terror and awe. Here was an animal that, when reared up on its massive hind legs and tail in a tripod stance, would have towered over 6 meters tall, as high as a 2-story building. Its front limbs, ending in those nightmarish claws, looked capable of gutting an elephant or ripping down the stoutest tree. It challenged the very definition of a sloth, a word synonymous with languor, and replaced it with an image of immense, ponderous power. The scientific community was electrified. Megatherium became a central piece of evidence in the developing theory of evolution. Charles Darwin himself, during his voyage on the HMS Beagle, collected Megatherium fossils in Argentina. He pondered its relationship to the tiny, tree-dwelling sloths of the modern Amazon, seeing in the contrast a stunning example of how species could change and diversify over time. The giant was a key that helped unlock the concept of a dynamic, changing Earth. Yet, for all the fossils and cave finds, the living animal remained elusive. How did it behave? Was it a solitary brute or a social creature? What did it eat with those enormous, peg-like teeth? And most chillingly, what were those colossal claws truly for? The caves gave us the body and the stage, but the script, the daily life and death of the giant, was still written in shadows. As you absorb this expansion of the mystery, let the soundscape evolve. The lonely cave sounds are joined by new layers, the distant, thunderous rumble of a Patagonian windstorm outside the cave mouth. The soft crunch and shift of a massive body settling onto a bed of dry grass and dung within the cavern. The low, guttural, almost vibratory hum of a herbivore's digestive system at work, a sound felt in the chest. The cave is no longer empty. It is occupied. The discovery of Megatherium did more than just add a new species to the catalogue of the extinct. It fundamentally altered the human perspective on time, nature, and our own place within it. Before its bones were assembled, the deep past was a realm of myth and vague biblical deluges. Megatherium made extinction a tangible, scientific fact. It proved that the world had not always been as it is, that entire orders of magnificent, terrifying life could vanish, leaving only cryptic bones and ghostly claw marks in forgotten caves. This revelation sparked what we now call the Great Megafauna debate. If such a creature existed so recently, geologically speaking, what killed it? Was it a changing climate as the Ice Age waned? Was it the arrival of a new, cunning predator? The presence of human artifacts in those same caves pointed a finger, however tentatively, at our own species. Megatherium became one of the first pieces in the puzzle of the Quaternary extinction event, forcing humanity to confront the possibility that its own expansion across the globe was a cataclysmic event for the planet's largest creatures. But beyond the scientific upheaval, Megatherium captured the public imagination like few other prehistoric creatures. It was not a dragon or a griffin, it was real. Its sheer ponderous scale made it a symbol of a lost age of wonders. Artists and writers were captivated. It appeared in lavish paintings, towering over primitive humans. Jules Verne referenced it in Journey to the Center of the Earth. It became a staple of the new paleo art, a constant reminder that truth could be stranger and more sublime than fiction. In South America, especially in Argentina and Chile, Megatherium took on a national and cultural significance. It was a relic of their unique and spectacular ancient fauna, a symbol of the continent's deep and dramatic history. Its image adorns stamps, museum logos, and scientific institutions. It is a source of pride, a regional titan to stand alongside the mammoths of the north. As we close this chapter of discovery, we stand at the threshold of the cave, looking in. We have seen the clues, the colossal bones, the scarred walls, the mummified skin, the enigmatic association with human tools. We have felt the shock of the first scientists and the awe of the public. We have a silhouette of the giant against the mouth of its dark home. But a silhouette is not enough. To move from myth to understanding, from fear to awe, we must step into the light with the creature. We must rebuild it not as a monster, but as an animal. We must understand the engineering of its 4-ton body, the purpose of its gigantic claws, the logic of its life in the Ice Age grasslands and forests. The mystery of the cave has been presented. Now begins the investigation of the beast itself. The next chapter takes us from the darkness of the cavern into the pale, vast light of the Pleistocene pampas. We will assemble the giant, muscle by muscle, and set it walking. We will see the world through its small, deep-set eyes, and feel the ground tremble under its weight. The ghost has been summoned. Now, we must give it flesh. Let the ancient forest air clear your mind for 10 seconds. If you find peace in discovering the lost giants of our world, please subscribe to join our journey. Next, we look closer at the weapons this giant carried. Welcome back to the Pleistocene world. We have followed the giant's trail from the darkness of the cave into the light. Now, we stand before it, not as a collection of mysterious bones, but as a living, breathing organism. This chapter is an act of paleontological reconstruction. We will build Megatherium from the ground up, understanding the sheer biomechanical marvel of a sloth that reached the size of an elephant. This is not a monster, it is a masterpiece of evolution, a 4-ton fortress of flesh and bone built for survival in a fierce world. Let us begin with the foundation, the skeleton. The first thing that strikes any observer is the sheer robustness. Every bone is overbuilt, thick and dense, designed to act as a pillar. The vertebral column is a marvel of engineering. The neck vertebrae are short and incredibly strong, supporting a heavy skull. The back vertebrae have long, projecting spines that provided anchor points for a massive network of back and shoulder muscles, the crane-like rigging needed to operate those enormous front limbs. The hips are wide and solid, a stable platform for the hindquarters. Now, attach the limbs. The hind limbs are pillar-like, ending in feet that turned inward, so the animal walked on the outer edges of its feet, with huge, blunt claws. This posture provided a stable, broad base. But the true wonders are the forelimbs. They are only slightly longer than the hind limbs, but they are incomparably more powerful. The bones of the arm, humerus, radius, ulna, are shorter and thicker than an elephant's leg bones. They were designed not for speed, but for immense strength and leverage. And at the end of these limbs, the hands. Megatherium's hands are among the most distinctive and fearsome tools in natural history. They had 5 digits, but the second, third, and fourth fingers were dominant, each ending in a long, laterally compressed, scythe-like claw, up to half a meter in length. These claws were not retractable. They were permanent, knife-like extensions of the fingers, encased in a horny sheath. The first and fifth fingers were smaller and clawless, likely used for finer manipulation or grasping. To protect these priceless weapons when walking, Megatherium walked on its knuckles, with the claws curled inward, facing each other, like a man making a loose fist. This unique knuckle-walking posture is key to understanding its movement, a slow, deliberate, powerful shuffle. Now, crown this massive frame with the skull. It is relatively small compared to the body, but heavily built. The jaw is deep and strong, housing a set of simple peg-like teeth that continuously grew throughout its life. There are no front teeth, incisors, for biting. Instead, the front of the jaws form a bony, shovel-like edge, perfect for cropping tough vegetation. The muscles that powered this jaw were immense, anchored to prominent crests on the skull, allowing it to grind the toughest, most fibrous plants. But a skeleton is just a scaffold. To animate it, we must add the musculature. The muscles attaching to those massive vertebral spines would have formed a huge, sloping back, like a buffalo's but on an elephantine scale. The shoulders would have been mounds of power. The arms, particularly the biceps and forearms, would have been thicker than tree trunks, capable of generating force to rip down branches or dig deep into the earth. This was an animal built for isometric strength, for holding, pulling, and tearing, not for punching or swiping. Finally, drape this anatomical titan in its integument. Fossilized skin impressions and mummified remains tell us it was covered in a dense, shaggy coat of coarse, reddish-brown hair. Beneath that, its skin was thick and leathery, likely embedded with small dermal ossicles, tiny bones in the skin, providing an extra layer of armor against the thorns of its environment and possibly the attacks of predators. It was, in every sense, a walking fortress. As you begin to visualize this creature, let the soundscape solidify its presence. That deep, seismic step is now part of a sequence. We hear the crunch of vegetation being torn, the deep, rhythmic crunch grind of its molars processing food, the steady whoosh of its breath from a barrel-sized chest. This is the sound of a living engine, burning plants to fuel its monumental form. With the Titan's physical form now clear in our mind's eye, we must understand how this 4-ton marvel moved and lived. Its anatomy was not for show. Every feature was a solution to the challenges of being a colossal, ground-dwelling herbivore in the Pleistocene Americas. Let's animate our reconstruction, starting with its most iconic behavior, standing up. Megatherium was not a constant biped. It likely spent most of its time on all fours, knuckle-walking with a slow, deliberate, swaying gait. But its skeleton reveals an incredible ability. Using its massive tail as a third leg, forming a sturdy tripod, and pushing off with its powerful arms, it could heave its entire bulk upright. In this position, it could tower over the landscape, reaching heights of 6 meters or more, as tall as a giraffe. This wasn't just for intimidation. It was a feeding strategy. In this bipedal stance, supported by its tail, it could use its powerful arms and claws to pull down high branches from trees that other herbivores couldn't reach. It could strip leaves, dig for roots, or even, as some speculate, push over smaller trees to get at the tender crown. Imagine the sound, a deep, groaning creak of muscle and tendon, followed by the violent crack and rustle of a whole canopy being dragged earthward. Now, consider its locomotion. On all fours, it was not built for speed. Its top pace was likely a slow walk or an awkward, shuffling trot. Its energy economy was based on efficiency, not velocity. It was a browser, not a grazer, moving slowly through patches of forest and scrub, consuming vast quantities of leaves, twigs, and fruits. Its simple, ever-growing teeth and powerful jaw muscles were perfect for grinding this fibrous, often gritty diet. Its massive gut, a fermentation vat of epic proportions, would have slowly broken down the tough cellulose with the help of symbiotic bacteria. This brings us to its ecology and habitat. Megatherium was a creature of the Pleistocene woodlands, savannas, and scrublands of South America. It thrived in a mosaic environment where patches of forest provided food and shelter, and open areas allowed for movement. Its size alone provided defense against most contemporary predators like the saber-toothed cat Smilodon populator or the massive short-faced bear Archaeology. An adult in good health would have been a formidable opponent, able to crush an attacker with its weight or disembowel it with a swipe of its claws. Its young, however, would have been vulnerable, likely staying close to the mother's bulk for protection. But what of those infamous claws? Their primary function was undoubtedly for feeding. They were the ultimate multi-tool, hooks for pulling down branches, digging tools for unearthing tubers and roots, and possibly stripping tools for removing bark. The knuckle-walking posture kept these vital instruments sharp and protected when not in use. They were extensions of its feeding apparatus, not weapons of war, though they could certainly serve as such in a fight. The image we now have is of a creature of profound, deliberate power and stability. It was the ecological equivalent of a slow-moving, living bulldozer, reshaping its environment as it fed. It created clearings by knocking down trees, it aerated soil by digging, it dispersed seeds through its dung. It was a keystone species, an ecosystem engineer whose very existence shaped the landscape for thousands of years. As our understanding deepens, the soundscape around this gentle giant should become richer. To the sounds of feeding and movement, add the environmental context, the rustle of leaves in a Pleistocene forest, the distant call of a terror bird, the buzz of giant insects. We hear the giant's interaction with its world, the thump of its tail bracing against the ground as it rises, the crunch-squelch of a large tuber being pulled from the earth, the deep, gurgling rumble of its digestive tract, a sound as constant and low as distant thunder. This was the rhythm of its life, slow, powerful, cyclical. A life measured not in miles traveled, but in tons of vegetation processed. Not in bursts of speed, but in displays of immense, patient strength. It was a creature perfectly in tune with the resources of its world. Yet, one question lingers, casting a faint shadow over this peaceful image of a colossal browser. Those claws are so large, so formidable. The jaw, while designed for plants, is incredibly powerful. Could this 4-ton fortress have ever hunted? We have built the giant, understood its strength, and witnessed its peaceful, powerful browsing life. But to complete our anatomical portrait, we must address the most provocative and debated question in Megatherium paleobiology, a question whispered by the very design of its formidable body. Could it have been an omnivore, or even a scavenger? The traditional view, supported by its teeth, jaw musculature, and gut morphology, is that of a strict herbivore. Its peg-like, ever-growing molars are perfect for grinding, not shearing flesh. Its digestive system was undoubtedly geared for slow fermentation of plant matter. For the vast majority of its diet, this was certainly true. It was a browser of the highest order. However, science is fueled by questioning consensus. In recent decades, a minority but compelling hypothesis has emerged, suggesting opportunistic omnivory. The proponents point to several intriguing clues. The claws, their primary function was for pulling down branches and digging. But such powerful hooks could also be used to tear open termite mounds or rip into the carcasses of large animals to access nutrient-rich bone marrow, a behavior seen in modern bears. They are tools of acquisition, and protein is a valuable resource. The strength, the sheer power in its arms and shoulders could have allowed it to flip over large animals, like a giant armadillo glyptodon, to access the soft underbelly, or to drive off predators from a kill to scavenge. The context, the Pleistocene was a land of extremes. During harsh seasons or droughts, high-quality plant protein might have been scarce. An animal with the capability to supplement its diet with animal protein, whether through scavenging, raiding nests, or even occasional predation on slow or vulnerable animals, would have had a significant survival advantage. Nitrogen isotope analysis. Some studies on bone collagen from related ground sloths have shown nitrogen isotope signatures that could be interpreted as a mixed diet, though evidence for Megatherium itself remains inconclusive. It is crucial to state that there is no direct evidence, like stomach contents with animal bones, proving Megatherium was a habitual meat eater. The carnivorous sloth idea is sensational and often overstated. The most balanced view is that Megatherium was likely an obligate herbivore that could, and probably would, engage in opportunistic scavenging if the chance arose. It might have been the Pleistocene equivalent of a grizzly bear, primarily vegetarian, but fiercely capable of exploiting animal protein when available, using its size and claws to claim carcasses. This debate highlights a vital principle in paleontology. We must avoid imposing modern, narrow categories on ancient life. The Pleistocene was a world of bizarre and extreme creatures, and their ecological roles may have been equally flexible. Megatherium's body was a multi-purpose survival machine. To limit our understanding of those incredible claws to only branch pulling is to perhaps underestimate the resourcefulness of a giant in a competitive world. Whether strictly herbivorous or occasionally opportunistic, the anatomical truth remains. Megatherium was one of the most powerfully built terrestrial mammals of all time. Its body was a testament to evolutionary investment in pure, durable strength. It was a creature that solved problems not with speed or cunning, but with overwhelming force and relentless patience. As we conclude this deep dive into its physical being, let us see the full picture. A shaggy, mountain-like animal moving through a landscape of giant grasses and strange trees. It is neither a violent monster nor a placid cow. It is a sovereign. Its movements dictate the rhythm of its immediate world. Birds might follow it to catch insects it disturbs. Smaller animals might flee its approach. It is a force of nature as natural and inevitable as a landslide, slow, ground-shaking, and transformative. As we watch this giant rest under the canopy, let the stillness bring you calm. If these deep stories bring you serenity, please like the video so other explorers can find us. In 10 seconds, we will uncover the darker secrets of the giant sloth. Welcome to the heart of the debate. We have seen Megatherium in its full, majestic scale, a 4-ton colossus built for power. But within that magnificent frame lies its most enigmatic feature, those scythe-like claws, longer than a man's forearm. For over 2 centuries, paleontologists have agreed on one primary function. They were tools for a herbivore. But in the shadows of science, a more chilling question has always lingered, whispered by the claw marks on cave walls and the sheer destructive potential in their curve. Could they have been used for more? This chapter delves into the mystery of the claws, separating solid evidence from sensational speculation, to ask, what secrets did Megatherium hold in its hands? The orthodox view is clear and well supported. Megatherium's claws were the Swiss Army knife of the Pleistocene herbivore. Their primary functions were feeding apparatus, their most vital role. The claws were hooks to pull down high branches, bringing foliage within reach of its mouth. They could strip bark from trees to access the nutritious cambium layer beneath, a behavior seen in modern porcupines and bears. Digging tools, their shape and strength were ideal for excavating. Megatherium likely dug for roots, tubers, and possibly water sources, especially in the drier, seasonal environments of the pampas. Defensive weapons, while not the primary design, a swipe from such a claw, powered by those immense shoulder muscles, could have gutted even the largest contemporary predator, like Smilodon or the giant bear Archaeology. They were a formidable deterrent. Locomotion and posture. As we've seen, the knuckle-walking posture protected these vital tools, keeping them sharp and ready for use. This view paints a picture of a gentle giant, Powerful, yes, but using its power in service of a vegetarian diet. The claws were an extension of its mouth, a way to access the immense amount of plant matter needed to fuel its massive body. However, a dissenting, more dramatic hypothesis has simmered for decades, occasionally boiling over into popular science: the carnivorous sloth theory. Its proponents point to several circumstantial but provocative points. The killing claw analogy. The claw's shape is often compared not to a digging tool, but to the talons of a predatory theropod dinosaur like Therizinosaurus, which, ironically, was also likely herbivorous, or the killing claws of a raptor. They are curved, laterally compressed, and ideal for hooking and tearing. Strength for violence. The arms weren't just strong for pulling branches, they were strong for ripping. This raw power could have been used to pull down large prey, tear open carcasses, or even kill. Ecological opportunity. In the competitive Pleistocene, a source of dense, high-quality protein like meat or bone marrow would have been invaluable, especially for a creature with such high caloric demands. The demon sloth of lore. Some point to indigenous legends of terrifying, clawed forest monsters as cultural memories of a more aggressive Megatherium. But here, we must apply rigorous scientific skepticism. The carnivore theory lacks direct fossil evidence. No Megatherium stomach contents have ever been found containing animal bones. No skeletons of other megafauna show claw marks that can be definitively linked to a sloth attack. The jaw and teeth remain those of a dedicated plant grinder, ill-suited for shearing flesh or crushing bone. A more plausible middle ground has emerged in recent years: the opportunistic scavenger hypothesis. This suggests that while Megatherium was primarily herbivorous, it would not have passed up the chance to scavenge a fresh carcass. Its size and strength would allow it to drive off smaller predators like dire wolves or even a solitary saber-tooth from a kill. Its claws could then be used to open the body cavity, and its powerful jaws could crush bones for marrow, a behavior called osteophagy, seen in modern hyenas and bears. This doesn't require active hunting, just ruthless opportunism. As you weigh these ideas, let the soundscape immerse you in the mystery. The grating screech of the claw gives way to other sounds. We hear the violent crack of a large branch being sundered, herbivore. Then, the wet, tearing rip of flesh, scavenger. Which sound belongs to the giant? The evidence suggests the first was its daily bread. The second may have been a rare, but powerful, supplement. To move beyond speculation, we must consult the hard evidence written in stone and bone. Modern paleontology has tools that Cuvier could never have dreamed of, allowing us to interrogate the past at a molecular level. Let's examine the key lines of evidence that shed light on the giant's diet. First, the dental evidence. Megatherium's teeth are hypsodont, high-crowned, and ever-growing, with a simple prismatic structure. The wear patterns on fossil teeth show a vertical grinding motion, perfect for pulverizing fibrous plant material. There is no sign of the shearing facets or carnassial blades seen in dedicated carnivores. The jaw joint also indicates a grinding, not a slicing, action. This is perhaps the strongest single argument against habitual meat eating. Second, coprolites, fossilized dung. While definitive Megatherium coprolites are rare, those from related ground sloths, like Nothrotheriops from North American caves, have been found. They are packed with plant fibers, twigs, and seeds. No bone fragments or hair from other animals have been identified within them. This direct evidence points squarely to a herbivorous diet. Third, and most compelling, is stable isotope analysis. Scientists can analyze the ratios of certain isotopes, like carbon-13 and nitrogen-15, preserved in fossil bone collagen or tooth enamel. These ratios act as a chemical signature of what an animal ate throughout its life. Carbon isotopes can tell us about the types of plants consumed, C3 versus C4 plants, which relate to different environments like forests versus grasslands. Nitrogen isotopes are particularly telling. They become enriched as you move up the food chain. A pure herbivore has a lower nitrogen-15 signature than an omnivore or carnivore. Studies on Megatherium and its relatives have yielded intriguing but mixed results. Some analyses show nitrogen signatures that are higher than expected for a pure browser, but still significantly lower than contemporaneous carnivores like Smilodon. This could support the opportunistic scavenging model. The animal's diet was overwhelmingly plant-based, but occasional consumption of animal protein, whether from scavenged meat, insects, or bone marrow, could have slightly elevated its nitrogen signature. It does not support a predatory lifestyle. Finally, we must consider biomechanics. Could Megatherium even effectively kill large prey? Its body was not built for pursuit. Its attack, if it came, would be a slow, powerful grapple, more like a bear than a cat. It could potentially pin and wound an animal, but dispatching a healthy, adult megafauna like a macrauchenia, a lithe, camel-like herbivore, would have been dangerous and energetically costly. Scavenging a fresh kill or preying on very young, sick, or trapped animals is a far more plausible scenario for meat consumption. The emerging consensus, therefore, is nuanced. Megatherium was likely a megafaunal generalist with a strong herbivorous bias. Its claws were primarily for acquiring vegetation, but their form and strength made them exaptations, structures that evolved for one purpose but could be co-opted for another. That another was likely breaking into termite mounds, digging up nutritious roots, and, when fortune presented, tearing into a carcass to access the rich, fatty marrow within the bones, a valuable source of calcium and phosphorus as well. This revised image is perhaps more fascinating than the binary of gentle giant or killer sloth. It shows an animal of immense power exercising ecological flexibility. In a world of scarcity and competition, the ability to exploit multiple food sources, even rarely, was a key to survival. The claws were the key to that flexibility. As the soundscape reflects this complexity, we move from the mystery of the night to the clarity of day. The unsettling sounds are replaced by the more familiar, diurnal symphony. We hear the giant's daily routine, the rustle shuffle of its movement through undergrowth, the snap crunch of branches being pulled down, the deep crunch grind of mastication. But very occasionally, mixed with these sounds, we hear something else. The crack of a large bone being shattered between powerful jaws, the wet slurp of marrow being consumed. It is a rare punctuation mark in the long sentence of its herbivorous life. The debate over the claws is more than an academic dispute about diet. It is a window into how we interpret the ancient world and the creatures that inhabited it. We are tempted to cast them in roles from our own narratives, the peaceful behemoth or the monstrous predator. But Megatherium defies such simple categorization. Its truth lies in a more profound ecological reality. Consider the Pleistocene South American ecosystem. It was a land of bizarre giants and fierce competition. Megatherium shared its world not only with other massive herbivores like the tank-like Glyptodon and the camel-like Macrauchenia, but also with formidable predators, the saber-toothed Smilodon, the monstrous short-faced bear Archaeology, and the terror birds. In this arena, pure passivity was not an option. An animal of Megatherium's size needed a formidable deterrent. Its claws were that deterrent, but they were also a statement of sovereignty. They said, "I am not prey. This territory, and the resources in it, are mine." This brings us to the claw's ultimate purpose: survival through dominance. Whether pulling down a tree, digging for water during a drought, driving a saber-tooth from its kill to steal marrow, or defending a calf from a pack of scavengers, the claw was the instrument of that dominance. It was a tool for controlling resources in a volatile world. The image we are left with is not of a carnivore, but of an apex generalist. It occupied a unique niche at the top of a complex food web, not by specializing in hunting, but by being so powerfully adapted to its environment that it could exploit almost any opportunity within reach. It shaped its landscape by its feeding, it recycled nutrients through its dung, and it likely influenced the behavior of every other creature that shared its space, from the predators that gave it a wide berth to the smaller animals that used its diggings or followed in its wake. The mystery of the claws, therefore, is solved not by choosing one extreme theory, but by synthesizing the evidence into a coherent portrait of a flexible titan. The claws were primarily for gathering plants, secondarily for digging and defense, and tertiarily for rare but crucial bouts of scavenging. This multifaceted utility is what made them, and their owner, so successful for so long. As this chapter closes, we see Megatherium not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a lesson in the complexity of ancient life. It teaches us that the past was not a simple time of monsters and prey, but a dynamic, nuanced world where survival demanded adaptability, power, and intelligence. The giant's claws were the physical manifestation of that evolutionary wisdom. Now, with a clearer understanding of the beast itself, our story must turn to its most fateful encounter: the arrival of a new, two-legged species that would ultimately share its continent, its caves, and perhaps its destiny. The giant's world was about to change forever. The forest is quiet now, and the giant has moved on. If you wish to support our scientific exploration, a simple like is enough. Now, after a 10-second moment of peace, we will find where this giant hid from the world. We have walked with the giant in its prime, understood its strength, and debated its nature. Now, we witness the moment when its ancient, solitary world intersected with a new and potent force, humanity. This chapter is about a meeting across the gulf of species and consciousness. It is the story of the first people to lay eyes on Megatherium, the ones who shared its continent, hunted it, depicted it, and perhaps, in their myths, remembered it. This is where paleontology meets archaeology, and bone meets story. The timeline is critical. The first humans, the Paleo-Indians, began crossing the Bering Land Bridge into the Americas around 16,000 to 13,000 years ago. By at least 14,000 years ago, they had pushed deep into South America. Megatherium and its megafaunal kin had reigned for millions of years. For a window of time, perhaps 2,000 to 4,000 years, these two very different actors shared the stage. It was a fleeting moment in geological time, but an eternity in human experience. What was that first encounter like? We can only imagine the scene. A band of hunter-gatherers, supremely adapted and observant, moving through a landscape of giant, unfamiliar creatures. They would have seen the giant ground sloth from a distance first, a shaggy, moving mountain on the horizon, a silhouette against the sky as it reared up to feed. The ground would have trembled at its approach. To those first humans, it would not have been an animal like any other. It would have been a landscape feature that moved, a force of nature made flesh. Fear, awe, and profound curiosity would have mixed in equal measure. The archaeological record provides tantalizing, though often debated, clues that this was more than a distant observation. The most compelling evidence comes from a site in Argentina called Campo Laborde. Here, archaeologists found the bones of a Megatherium in direct association with stone tools and cut marks on the bones. The dating is controversial, but if correct, it suggests humans butchered a giant sloth over 12,000 years ago. The image is stark. A group of humans, armed with sharpened stone, working together to process a creature that could have crushed any one of them with a single step. Other sites hint at a different relationship. In the caves of Patagonia, like Cueva del Milodon, the presence of human hearths and tools alongside the sloth's mummified skin and dung suggests humans used the caves after the sloths, perhaps seeking shelter in the abandoned, hair-lined dens of the giants. Did they feel the ghostly presence of the former occupant? Did they see the claw marks on the walls and wonder about the creature that made them? But the most poignant evidence of the encounter is not in butcher marks or shared dwellings. It is in art. While no unambiguous cave painting of Megatherium has been definitively identified, many giant sloth petroglyphs are disputed. The possibility is haunting. Imagine an early artist, charcoal or ochre in hand, trying to capture the essence of the towering beast on a cave wall. Its massive body, its long claws, its small head. Such an image would be more than decoration. It would be an attempt to understand, to document, to assert a kind of power over the incomprehensible through representation. As you picture this pivotal epoch, let the soundscape deepen the immersion. The human campfire sounds remain, but now we hear other activities. The scrape of a hide being worked, the thud of a digging stick into earth. And in the distance, now clearer, the unmistakable, seismic thud of the giant step. The humans around the fire fall silent, listening. The two soundscapes, the intimate human circle and the colossal presence in the dark, are now in direct conversation. The relationship between early humans and Megatherium likely existed on a spectrum, from wary coexistence to active predation. To understand it, we must consider the strategies and motivations on both sides. From the human perspective, a Megatherium represented both an unprecedented danger and an unimaginable resource. Hunting one would have been an act of extraordinary audacity and coordination. It would have required deep knowledge of the animal's behavior, likely targeting the young, the old, or the sick. Strategies might have included ambush at waterholes, waiting for the giant to come to drink, vulnerable and focused. Driving into traps, using fire or noise to herd a sloth into a natural trap like a mud pit or a steep ravine. Attrition hunting, wounding it with spears from a distance and tracking it for days until it weakened. A single, successful hunt would have been a windfall for an entire clan. Thousands of pounds of meat, fat for fuel and hides, bones for tools and shelters, and sinew for cordage. The procurement of such a mega-resource could have fueled social complexity, enabled larger group gatherings, and been remembered in story and ritual for generations. But hunting was not the only interaction. There was also scavenging. Humans, being intelligent opportunists, would certainly have taken advantage of a Megatherium that died of natural causes or was killed by other predators. They may have even followed the giants, waiting for such an opportunity. And there was avoidance. A healthy adult Megatherium would have been invulnerable. Giving it a wide berth would have been simple prudence. From the Megatherium perspective, humans were a new kind of nuisance. They were not large like a saber-tooth, but they were persistent, clever, and coordinated. They used projectiles and fire. An adult sloth's thick hide and size offered protection, but its eyesight was likely poor. Humans could harass it, separate a mother from her young, or steal from a carcass it was scavenging. While not a primary predator, humans introduced a new, unpredictable stressor into its world. This interaction likely left a cultural imprint on the first Americans. While explicit cave paintings are elusive, the creature may have lived on in mythology. The giant, slow-moving, powerful beast with enormous claws fits the archetype of many primordial monsters, or earth spirits, found in indigenous folklore across the Americas. Tales of giant, burrowing animals or forest guardians could be distant, distorted echoes of a time when such creatures were real. The archaeological smoking gun remains elusive, but the circumstantial case is strong. The coincidence of human arrival and megafaunal extinction in the Americas is too stark to ignore. While climate change played a role, the overkill hypothesis argues that humans were the decisive factor. For a slow-reproducing animal like Megatherium, which likely had one calf at a time after a long gestation, even a modest increase in mortality from a new, intelligent predator could have pushed populations into an irreversible decline over centuries. As we contemplate this fragile, fraught coexistence, the soundscape evolves. The tense standoff from the previous pause resolves. The giant's footsteps do not enter the firelight. They slowly recede, fading into the distance. The humans around the fire release a collective, barely audible sigh. Conversation resumes, but it is hushed, punctuated by glances into the dark. We hear the sounds of tools being checked, spears being straightened by the fire. The encounter has left its mark. It has taught a lesson of respect and possibility. The giant is not just a part of the landscape anymore. It is a potential source of survival and a permanent note of danger in the human mind. The shared millennia between humans and Megatherium were a fleeting bridge between two worlds. On one side, the ancient, stable order of the Pleistocene megafauna, where giants moved slowly through evolutionary time. On the other, the rapid, cognitive fire of Homo sapiens, a species that would reshape the planet. Their intersection was not a collision of equals, but the touching of a comet with a mountain, one destined to pass by and transform, the other to endure for a while longer, scarred by the encounter. This period left an indelible, if subtle, mark on human development in the Americas. Confronting and learning to exploit such massive creatures may have accelerated technological innovation, larger projectile points, cooperative hunting strategies, and social organization. The knowledge gained, tracking, anticipating behavior, processing monumental carcasses, became part of the cultural toolkit that allowed humans to rapidly adapt to every biome on the continent. For Megatherium, the human arrival added a new, potent pressure to a world already in flux. The climate was warming, the great ice sheets retreating, and ecosystems were shifting. The mosaic of woodlands and grasslands it depended on was changing. Into this stress entered a predator that did not just attack the weak, but could strategically target the vulnerable, and whose population could grow exponentially. The combination likely proved fatal. One by one, across South America, the last of the giants died. The ground stopped trembling. Yet, in their passing, they left a void that echoed. The ecological roles they filled, bulldozing trees, dispersing large seeds, turning over soil, vanished, likely altering the very structure of South American ecosystems in ways we are still deciphering. The first Americans witnessed this transformation within their own oral histories. The world of their great-grandparents, thundering with giants, became the world of their grandchildren, quieter, smaller. The encounter's true end is not marked by the last death, but by the last memory. When did the living knowledge of Megatherium fade from human tradition. It likely persisted for generations after its extinction, evolving from a real animal into a legend, a cautionary tale, a spirit of the forest or the underworld. Perhaps the myth of the mapinguari, a giant, foul-smelling, clawed forest guardian of Amazonian lore, carries within it a germ of truth, a folk memory of the shaggy, powerful, and ultimately vulnerable giant that once shared the continent. Today, we are the inheritors of that encounter. When we look at the reconstructed skeleton in a museum, we are not just looking at an extinct animal. We are looking at a mirror of our own past. We see a creature whose existence tested the limits of our ancestors' courage, ingenuity, and adaptability. Its extinction is a part of our story, an early chapter in the complex and often destructive relationship between humanity and the planet's megafauna, a relationship that continues to this day. As we close this chapter, we stand at the cave's mouth once more. But now, we see it through the eyes of those early humans. It is no longer just the den of a monster. It is a shelter, a canvas, a larder, a tomb. It holds the bones of the giant and the ashes of human fires, layered together in the same sediment. It is the physical testament to a time when our world was shared, and a monument to its passing. The echoes in the tunnels are slowly fading. Don't forget to subscribe to help us keep illuminating these ancient mysteries. In 10 seconds, we will learn how the sun set on the era of the giants. We have followed the giant from its discovery in the dark, through the majesty of its life, to its fateful meeting with humanity. Now, we arrive at the end of its journey, and the beginning of its legacy. This final chapter is not about death, but about absence. It is about the silence that follows the last footfall, the void left in an ecosystem, and the enduring echo in stone and memory. We travel to the land where Megatherium made its last stand, the windswept, beautiful desolation of Patagonia, to contemplate the end of an age and the beginning of our own. The extinction of Megatherium, around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, was not an isolated event. It was part of the Quaternary extinction event, a wave of disappearance that swept across the Americas, claiming roughly 80% of its large mammal species. The mammoths, mastodons, saber-tooths, giant beavers, and the armored glyptodonts all vanished in a geological instant. For centuries, scientists have debated the cause. The evidence points not to a single culprit, but to a perfect storm. Climate change. The world was emerging from the last glacial maximum. As the ice sheets melted, sea levels rose, weather patterns shifted, and ecosystems transformed. The mixed woodlands and grasslands that Megatherium depended on began to fragment. Some plant species it relied on may have declined or shifted range faster than the slow-moving sloth could follow. For a specialist of such immense size, even subtle changes in food availability could be catastrophic. Human impact. The timing is damning. The arrival and rapid spread of skilled hunter-gatherers across the continents coincides precisely with the megafauna's decline. As we explored in the last chapter, humans were a new type of predator, intelligent, cooperative, and capable of innovation. We were likely the proximate cause, the final push. The overkill hypothesis suggests that even a low rate of hunting could doom a species with a slow reproductive rate. A Megatherium female might have one calf every few years after a long gestation. Losing even a few adults per generation could send a population into an irreversible spiral. The most compelling model is the synergistic effect. Climate change stressed the megafauna, shrinking and altering their habitats, reducing their numbers, and perhaps concentrating them around dwindling resources like waterholes. This made them more vulnerable. Then, humans arrived, a highly efficient predator, and applied targeted pressure on these already weakened populations. The combination was devastating. The giants, rulers of their world for millions of years, had no evolutionary answer for this new, dual threat. Imagine the last populations of Megatherium, clinging to refugia in Patagonia or the Amazon basin. Their world growing warmer, stranger, quieter as other megafauna disappeared. The once familiar rumble of other giants replaced by an eerie quiet. And always, on the periphery, the smoke of human fires, the discovery of butchered kin. They were witnesses to the end of their world. As you absorb this culmination, let the soundscape embody the changing world. The pure Patagonian wind is the constant. But listen closely. Within it, you might hear fading, ghostly echoes, the deep thud of a step, the crunch of a branch. They are faint, fragmented, memories in the air. Then, a new, sharp sound. The whistle of a human-thrown spear, followed by a distant, final, seismic thud that does not lead to another step. Then, silence, save for the wind. The giant's symphony has ended. Only the wind remains, playing over the empty stage. In the wake of the giants, the world was irrevocably altered. Their passing was not just a subtraction of species, it was a fundamental rewiring of ecosystems. Megatherium was an ecosystem engineer. Its feeding habits knocked down trees, creating clearings and promoting new growth. Its digging for roots and tubers aerated soil and created microhabitats. Its massive dung fertilized the land and dispersed seeds, some of which may have been adapted to pass through its gut. With its disappearance, these processes ceased. Forests may have grown denser, different. The composition of plants shifted. The landscape of fear it helped create for smaller animals vanished, potentially leading to population explosions of certain species and declines of others. The extinction of Megatherium and its megafaunal contemporaries was an ecological shockwave whose ripples we are still learning to trace in the fossil record and in the modern ecosystems of South America. Yet, from this ending, a new beginning emerged. For science and for our understanding of ourselves. The bones of Megatherium, lying in the open or hidden in caves, became messengers from deep time. Their discovery forced European naturalists to confront the reality of extinction, a concept that challenged religious and philosophical doctrines of a static, perfect creation. They became key evidence in the development of evolutionary theory, showing how life changed form over vast periods. Charles Darwin himself pondered the giant sloths of South America, seeing in them a link to the present. Today, Megatherium stands as an icon of paleontology. Its skeleton is a centerpiece in museums worldwide, a symbol of the lost wonders of the Ice Age. For the nations of South America, especially Argentina and Chile, it is a point of pride, a unique, spectacular piece of their natural heritage, a reminder that their lands were once home to the most extraordinary creatures on Earth. But the most profound lesson of Megatherium's end is a cautionary tale for our present. We are now living through another mass extinction event, the Holocene extinction, driven primarily by human activity. Habitat destruction, climate change, pollution, overexploitation. The story of Megatherium shows us that our species has had a disproportionate impact on the planet's largest creatures since our earliest days. We are not just witnessing the sixth extinction, we are its cause. The silence that followed the giant's footsteps is a sound we are creating anew across the globe, for elephants, rhinos, great apes, and whales. In Patagonia, the wind seems to carry this lesson. Standing in the mouth of Cueva del Milodon, looking out over the vast, empty steppe, you can feel the weight of absence. The cave is silent, but for the wind. The claw marks on the wall are there, but the claw that made them is gone forever. It is a place for contemplation, of time, of loss, and of responsibility. Perhaps, in that silence, we can also hear a note of hope. The very fact that we can piece together the story of Megatherium, that we can mourn its passing and learn from its extinction, is a testament to human curiosity and empathy. We are the first species capable of looking back, understanding our impact, and choosing to change course. The giant's legacy is not just a lesson in what we have destroyed, but a challenge for what we can preserve. As we stand in this reflective space, the soundscape should evoke both loss and perspective. The Patagonian wind remains, but now it is joined by a new, delicate layer, the sound of gentle rain beginning to fall on the plain, a sound of renewal. Then, from very far away, the call of a modern bird, a condor perhaps, riding the thermals over the Andes. Life, in different forms, persists. The world moves on. The sounds of the present, the rain, the bird, the wind, begin to gently overlay and then slowly replace the haunting emptiness. They form a new, simpler, but resilient symphony. As our journey concludes, we do not leave the giant behind in the past. We carry it forward, transformed. Megatherium the animal is gone, but Megatherium the idea has become something more permanent, a touchstone for our relationship with the natural world, a symbol of Earth's deep, creative potential, and a humbling reminder of time's vast scale. In the quiet of a museum hall, as you stand before its assembled bones, you are not just looking at a fossil. You are conducting a séance with deep time. You are communing with an Earth that was profoundly different, a planet that could conceive of and build a 4-ton sloth. That creative force is still within our world, expressed in the hummingbird's hover and the whale's song. The giant reminds us that the story of life is one of boundless imagination. Our series began in the darkness of a cave, with the echo of a claw on stone. It ends under the boundless Patagonian sky, with the wind as the sole narrator. This arc, from mysterious discovery to scientific understanding, from fear to awe, from existence to memory, is the story we tell about all lost worlds. It is a story that enlarges us. By comprehending the giant, we comprehend our own smallness in geological time, and yet we also comprehend our unique power, the power to discover, to learn, and to choose. The silence that followed Megatherium is not empty. It is full of questions. Questions about resilience and fragility, about our role as a species that can both decipher extinction and drive it. The wind that sweeps its bones asks us, what will we create with our knowledge? What silences will we leave in our wake? And what wonders will we choose to preserve? Let the final sound you hear be not an ending, but a passing of the watch. The giant's long vigil over the Pleistocene is over. Now, we stand on the same ground, under the same stars, heirs to a world it helped shape. The responsibility for the story's next chapter, a chapter of conservation, understanding, and reverence for the life that remains, is ours. Begin a final, 10-minute fade. The sounds of the Patagonian present, the wind, the distant condor's cry, the gentle rain, slowly, gracefully begin to transform. They become less literal, more ethereal. The wind becomes a soft, universal sigh. The bird call becomes a clear, high, peaceful tone. The rain becomes a gentle, shimmering whisper. These elements blend into a serene, uplifting, and slightly melancholic soundscape, a musical representation of memory, loss, and enduring wonder. This soundscape holds, filling the space with a sense of peaceful resolution and expansive connection. Then, with infinite gentleness, it begins to simplify. The tones soften, the textures smooth out. The soundscape dissolves from a complex piece of music back into the pure, elemental sound of a light breeze, the same breeze that might stir the grasses over a fossil bed, or ruffle the pages of a book in a museum. This breeze, the breath of the present, softly whispers for a few final moments. And then, it too fades, not into silence, but into the quiet, rhythmic sound of your own breathing, and the steady, comforting beat of your own heart. The journey is complete. The story is told. The giant sleeps in the stone, and in our minds, forever. Thank you for joining us on this journey tonight. If you found peace, feel free to explore our other videos and join the Scientific Serenity family. Now, you are left alone with the sounds of the ancient night for a deep sleep. Good night.